I want you to think of someone close to you, someone important in your life for some reason, either positive or negative. Now, I want you to think about what your relationship is to that person, but with a specific twist. You're not allowed to use the normal relationship words you might use for that person. For example, you're not allowed to define your relationship to them as a spouse or a parent, friend, sibling, or similar words. Try to describe only the actual content and context of the relationship. What connections, interests, obligations, and histories do you have with that person that makes them important? How do you relate to them in terms of actions, emotions, thoughts, and goals? Where do you agree and disagree? Chances are there is a lot more context to the relationship than might normally be considered. Our connections to each other are often much more interesting than the normal shorthand we use to describe them. The fact that there is a person in my life who is more thoughtful and kind than any person I've ever met, who supported me no matter what I've tried to do with my life and cared for me for as long as I can remember, and that I feel a positive obligation to repay by being a better person in return, is much more important than the fact that the person described happens to be my mother. I've noticed that when I create connections from my characters in games, they rarely end up being integrated into the campaign, and if they are used, then the interactions end up being pretty surface level and fairly bland, often leading to an early and uneventful exit for those characters. I think the above exercise has shown me why that might be. In the past, when I've created or thought through the connections the characters I play have had, they tended to just be noun descriptors. This connection is my character's brother, another connection is my character's spouse, and so on. The problem with these descriptors is that while relationship words are loaded with a lot of meaning for us personally, they actually offer very little context about the dynamic between the two characters, as every brotherly or spousal relationship can manifest very differently from others. They're words that seem strong but are ultimately empty. They convey more importance than they offer unless there's a deeper explanation. Consider the following two examples. The first one. I have a relationship with a character who, after the death of my parents when I was quite young, raised me. They sacrificed everything to make sure I was able to survive and thrive, and I owe them everything. I feel like I'll never be able to repay them for all they've done, but I need to try. And contrast that with the second one. I have a relationship with a character who, after the death of my parents when I was quite young, abandoned me and left me on my own. I resent them for leaving me, and I still don't feel like I've properly dealt with the betrayal. Confusingly, I can't bring myself to truly hate them. I'm not sure how I would react to seeing them again, whether I try to get revenge or still fall back for seeking approval from someone who will never provide it. Both of these descriptions could easily describe someone's relationship to their brother in an RPG, but they could not be further apart from each other in terms of the actual connection that's built. There's so much more to our connections with each other than the language we usually resort to describing them with. We can catch a glimpse of the deeper nature of our characters by how they characterize their relationships and act them out in the world. We see who they are, what they believe, and why. Not to mention that a deeper and more thought-out relationship gives both the players and the game master so much more to work with. Introducing an NPC with a deep and contextualized relationship provides an instant loaded plotline, and the GM knows exactly how to integrate the characters into the world and the motivations that will bring about the most interesting conflict. A GM might be lost at how to pull a character's brother into the story, but if they know that the relationship is fraught with conflict, betrayal, and a need for approval, then there is a powerful string to tug at right away. This goes beyond just NPC connections as a player character too. Thinking through your character's connections to the other PCs can bring about new and interesting ways to engage each other as a party, and using a similar method as a GM can help to build more interesting and connected worlds. It's easy to take for granted how complicated our relationships are, both in games and in life, but examining those connections and trying to understand how they can affect our lives, personalities, and decision-making can be an incredibly rewarding and enlightening experience. I want to stop taking the terms of my connections for granted, and build deeper connections for my characters and the people they interact with, but also for myself and my life and the people I care about, for better games and better lives. Thanks for listening.